Richard, and I am delighted to be here in these new headquarters. I have been often to, the mothership in New York City, but it's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
Groups so secretive that their very existence was denied for decades. Groups like the Council on Foreign Relations. Although the CFR, from its founding in the wake of World War I, had been largely directed by interests connected to J.P. Morgan, the Rockefellers had been warm to the Council and its interests from the beginning. The Rockefeller influence on the CFR rose when David joined as a member in the 1940s, and by the time he became the director of the organization in 1970, the takeover was complete.
Here is the Council's annual report published in 1978. The organization's membership list names 1,878 members, and the list reads like a who's who in America. 10 CFR members are U.S. senators. Even more congressmen belong to the organization. Sitting on top of this immensely powerful pyramid, as chairman of the board, is David Rockefeller. As you can see from this page in the CFR annual report, 284 of its members are U.S. government officials. Any organization which can boast that 284 of its members are U.S. government officials should be well known. Yet most Americans have never even heard of the Council on Foreign Relations. One reason why this is so is that 171 journalists, correspondents, and communications executives are also CFR members, and they don't write about the organization. In fact, CFR members rarely talk about the organization inasmuch as it is an express condition of membership that any disclosure of what goes on at CFR meetings shall be regarded as grounds for termination of membership.
Even more secretive and exclusive was the Bilderberg Group, founded in 1954 by Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. Meeting annually, the group has brought together the world's richest and most powerful bankers, corporate heads, government officials, and royalty from Europe and North America for the past half-century. From the beginning, the conference was an incredibly exclusive affair, and one in which the utmost secrecy was demanded from its participants. Only 73 people attended that first meeting in 1954, including Prince Bernhard, several members of parliament of various European nations, foreign ministers, the former Prime Minister of France, the director of J.P. Morgan, the chairman of Unilever, and other international power players. From within that 73, 10 rapporteurs were selected to introduce the talking points on the agenda and lead group discussion, including, of course, David Rockefeller. Over the 63 years of its existence, the group has hosted discussions that have given birth to the European Union and, later on, the Euro, planned the 1973 oil crisis, and set the timetable for the 2003 invasion of Iraq, amongst many other things. The group itself has lived in nearly total obscurity for much of that time, guarded from discovery by the publishers and editors of mainstream media organizations that dutifully complied with the meeting's demand for secrecy from attendees. It wasn't until independent internet-based media outlets began covering the meetings in recent years that the group was forced to start an official website, and conference minutes and even recordings of the very first Bilderberg meeting have been leaked online.
You may wonder why I have asked you to come here. I have in mind a completely frank and open exchange of views, and this is ensured to you, and it is essential for our success. There is no verbatim quotation of anybody, and there's no press, so you're quite free to let yourselves go, if I may say so.
Although as founding member, rapporteur, and steering committee advisor, David had remarkable control over this, one of the most exclusive and powerful organizations in the world. Remarkably, even that was not good enough for him. Concerned by the lack of Japanese participation in the meetings as Japan grew in economic importance, he lobbied the Bilderberg Conference to begin inviting Japanese members to the meetings. When this was turned down, David promptly started another, equally obscure and equally powerful group, the Trilateral Commission, to fulfill his vision of a North American, European, Japanese conference.
And then you created the Trilateral Commission, in a sense, to develop relationships with Japan and the rest of the world.
I felt very strongly that Japan had become a major power in the world, and that we culturally had very few relations with them. It seemed to me that was a mistake. And so I tried first to persuade the Bilderberg group, which you've been to and know,
Yes.
To include Japan. But they turned that down. They thought the relation with Europe was important and stick to it. So when they turned it down, a group of us started the Trilateral Commission.
And it continues today, and you're going to Japan in April.
Exactly.
Although once again David downplays both his role in the Trilateral Commission and its ultimate significance, it is in fact another group of powerful individuals, including multiple members of every American presidential administration since its founding in 1973, meeting in nearly total obscurity to push Rockefeller's globalist agenda.
The year is 1917, and Representative Oscar Callaway enters a disturbing statement into the U.S. congressional record. The statement reveals why J.P. Morgan interests hired 12 high-ranking news managers. The 12 were asked to determine the most influential newspapers in America. They were to figure out how many news organizations it would take to control generally the policy of the daily press of the United States. The 12 found it was only necessary to purchase the control of 25 of the greatest papers. An agreement was reached. The policy of the papers was bought, and an editor was placed at each paper to ensure that all published information was in keeping with the new policy. Soon, that policy would be defined by a front group formed by J.P. Morgan and his colleagues. In fact, Morgan's personal attorney was founding president of the organization, the Council on Foreign Relations. Today, the CFR maintains that its goal is to increase America's understanding of the world. However, the actual objective of this highly exclusive club is revealed by the rare admissions of the insiders themselves. In the early 60s, a Georgetown University professor collects information for a book favorable to the network of powerful men who founded the CFR. For 2 years, Professor Carroll Quigley is allowed to examine the confidential papers and secret records of this network. Quigley reveals that these men aim to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. In short, they seek total and quiet control of the entire world. And the CFR is their most visible conduit for carrying out that agenda. CFR members include America's wealthiest tycoons, as well as the highly placed elite in government, academic institutions, tax-exempt foundations, and the establishment media. Ruling Class Journalists, written by Richard Harwood, describes the CFR membership as the ruling establishment in the United States. The Washington Post article boasted that news reporters who are CFR members do not merely analyze and interpret foreign policy for the United States, they help make it. Who are these policymakers? Many of their faces are familiar. NBC's Tom Brokaw, CBS's Dan Rather, ABC's Barbara Walters, Jim Lehrer of PBS, William F. Buckley of National Review, media mogul Rupert Murdoch, owner of the giant multifaceted News Corporation. These media heavyweights, and many others like them, are members of the CFR. Powerful corporations are also invited to become members. At the close of the 20th century, CFR influence presided over far-reaching consolidations of media control. In 1995, CFR members Michael Eisner of Disney and ABC's Thomas Murphy merged their media empires. Soon after the merger, the Disney-ABC empire becomes a CFR corporate member. In the year 2000, the world's largest internet service provider, America Online, joins forces with Time Warner, one of the world's largest news organizations. The CEOs favoring the move are CNN's Thomas Johnson and Time Warner's Gerald Levin, both CFR members. Once again, another media giant is created under the shadow of CFR influence. Today, an elite handful of individuals define the agendas that are supported by the empire of establishment news.